Hey guys, welcome back to the Beauty in the Grinds community here on YouTube. I'm happy to have you with me. So tonight's video is a collaboration with Daisy Sanders at Skin Intentional Beauty here on YouTube. We're going to be talking about concealing for over the age of 30. She's going to be covering a little bit of different aspect than I am here tonight. So make sure that you check out her video when you're done watching this one if you want to learn even more amazing under eye concealing tips. So if you're interested in seeing application techniques for applying concealer under your eye over the age of 30, learning some tips and techniques that I use personally on myself and on my clients. If you want to learn a little bit more about application tools and how they can help you perfect the under eye area, even little like skincare suggestions or even different concealers that you can use and how they can help you, then please keep watching. So I'm super excited about tonight's video. As I just mentioned, it is a collaboration with Daisy Sanders, and tonight's video was just one that I felt was highly overdue. We've got to get some concealer tricks on our channels, and I thought that doing it together would be where to start. If you would like to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell notifier so you'll always know when I'm posting something new. And I'm going to go ahead and start talking about the tools of the trade. Tools that you should be using when you're applying under eye concealer to kind of help cultivate that flawless, even look as best as possible, especially if you're over the age of 30. So the first thing that I want to mention is that a tool can be your fingers. I'm not leaving the fingers out this evening. So if you love putting concealer on with your fingers, you are included. So fingers are one of the tools that you can use, and then I'm going to share 3 of my favorites. So I'm going to be breaking this tutorial down into segments. I want to start with tools because I think it's important why I use these tools on myself personally and why I love to use them on other people. The first brush, and don't mind the fact that they are kind of dirty, the first brush is a small paddle brush. There's nothing in particularly special about this brush except that it's small and completely dense and flat. The reason that I like this brush is because it does great things for cake types of concealer. Now, no, I don't just blend the whole eye out using one of these paddle brushes, but I do like to lay down a very thin application of cake types of concealer. And when I say cake types of concealer, I'm talking about those that are pressed and come in a cake form like in a palette. And the reason I like to do it with a brush like this and not an open brush that's kind of fluffy is I can get a very even, very thin coating of concealer. The second tool is my second favorite, and this is from Merle Norman, and this is face number 8. It's an angled synthetic concealing brush. Now it's dense, which means there's a lot of bristles and it will pack pigment, but it's highly movable, meaning that it's going to move underneath the eye area but keep the pigment together so that you can concentrate it in areas of need. So I find that I can pack concealer very well into the small area under the eye and then lightly blend it out. But I don't use this brush specifically just for blending, although you can. That's going to lead me into the third type of brush that you can use under your eye, and that is an eyeshadow brush. This is the 217 from MAC. It's basically a fluffy brush that's kind of tapered. Any type of fluffy tapered brush will work for blending. I use this specifically for blending. I love the fact that my friend Daisy has got different tips and techniques about brushes and tools. So again, you're going to want to check out that video. But for me personally, I use this to blend concealer after I've placed it all on my eye and blur out those edges, blend it into my foundation, and just make sure there are no harsh lines, edges, or even like concentrated pigment in area that might make it look cakey. The last tool is just a setting brush. This is how I set my concealer. I use a flat, large foundation brush or a paddle brush. This is also Merle Norman. It's their face foundation brush, and I don't know what the number is, but any flat tapered foundation brush will work. There's multiple ways you can set the under eye area. You can use sponges, you can use puffs, you can use, my goodness, you can use brushes such as this one from Real Techniques, something that's small and able to press in some powder so that your concealer will have longevity and last evenly throughout the day with minimal creasing or no creasing at all. So I just wanted to cover the tools. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and roll right into how I conceal my eyes. Obviously I have a full face of makeup on, so I'd like for you guys to see me with minimal makeup and absolutely nothing under my eyes so that you get a good take on how I apply it. So the first step that I always recommend is using an eye cream. Tapping it in lightly under your eyes using a ring finger. If you want to learn a little bit more about eye cream or the proper way to apply it, you can watch the video that I will try to tag right over here. Sometimes they don't work, so if you don't see it, I will leave it in the description box or even put it at the end of this video, just so you guys can pick up some tips and techniques. The reason I always suggest using an eye cream is it helps to hydrate the eye area. If there are dark circles, eye cream, a lot of eye creams have optical diffusers in them, so it can kind of bounce light away from the area, making dark circles look even less noticeable. Now, if you have really oily eye area, you might want to skip the eye cream. Maybe you don't feel that you need it, or find a very, very light, lotiony type of eye cream that you can still keep the under eye hydrated. So the first product that I personally start off using is the Pro Conceal and Correct palette from MAC. You'll see that there are 4 colors up top. These are the concealer colors, and the 2 on the bottom are color correctors. I'm going to be using both the color correctors today. I do like to use color correctors if I find that it's necessary on my clients. I find that it really helps to diminish the look of dark circles. It will even out the skin tone, and then it will make the concealer apply better when placed on top. So the first thing that I'm going to do is apply this pale pink shade underneath my eye area. I'm going to be using a face number 6 brush from Merle Norman. Now I do apply this product right in the inner corner of my eye area. That's where I find that my dark circles are, and I just lightly apply it there. I'm not really worried about blending it out. I'm going to do that in the next step. I take some of it underneath my lower lash line because I do tend to have a little bit more redness that I want to conceal, and some of my veins show, so it's a little bit blue. The second color that I'm going to be using in the palette is this pale yellow shade. I love it because it's perfect for highlighting. Using the same brush, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to brighten the outer corner of my eye, and I just kind of draw a line. And this not only will brighten the eye area, but it will also lift the eye area. Anywhere you apply like a creamy highlighter will kind of diminish the look of depth and darkness. The next product that I'm going to be using today is the MAC Studio Fix 24-hour smooth wear concealer. Now what I like to do with this is I will directly go in and I will apply this concealer right on top of the color corrector, just 2 little dots. It does dry very, very quickly. So I do find that if you're working with a long wear concealer, you gotta bust a move. You can't let it sit for too long. I'm going in with a completely different brush. This is my face number 8 from Merle Norman. It's a synthetic brush. It's very dense, but it's really movable at the same time. So it will allow me to move that concealer around my eye area. So I do find that although this brush is dense, it's really good about moving product underneath the eye area and blending it out. I also like that I can pack product in where I need it with this particular brush. So I do think that brushes are very important when you are creating a beautiful, flawless looking eye and blending in concealer, especially when you're over 30. Now, the third brush I'm going to be using is a MAC 217 brush. I use this to kind of blend out the edges, and then I will go over to this outer corner and blend that highlighter. And because this brush is very fluffy, but still tapered, it will control the product, but blend it out seamlessly, so that I get rid of any harsh lines, any harsh edges, and I just go over the whole eye area with that. So when I am personally done, I like to look at kind of my eye, make sure that everything looks concealed, everything is covered, everything is blended. I will use my ring finger to kind of tap anything in addition to that, just to make sure that everything is melded into my skin. And that's it. So here's the difference between my right eye and my left eye. Now, I do like to set my concealer. Setting your concealer is extremely important, even over the age of 30, because you don't want that concealer to move around. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to do the whole heavy baking thing. If maybe that's not something that you really like to do, or maybe you do have dry skin and putting a whole lot of powdery product under your eye emphasizes fine lines and wrinkles. So there are a couple products that you can use that are on the market. One of my favorites is the NYX Studio Finishing Powder. Now, this is a silica powder, so it is white. I find that it does highlight and it looks very light and it wears beautifully on the skin. However, if you do have a deeper skin tone, if a flash is taking, there is going to be a little bit of a kickback. It could even look slightly ashy. So if you have a deeper skin tone, maybe it's not as fair as mine or even light, another great product to use is actually a setting powder, a baking powder. This is the Fit Me. Now, obviously, this is the color Fair, but they offer multiple different colors for different skin tones, going from light to deep. And there's a lot of brands that have a very basic setting powder. You're just looking for one that is not too heavy, that is finely milled, that kind of has a matte set to it, so that when you apply it underneath of your eye, it's not going to be garishly shiny. But you also don't want it so flat and so matte that it kind of dries out the eye area or it makes it look dry. So I find that powders that are finely milled, that are right in the middle, maybe they're a mixture between silica plus maybe talc or silicone in them, they do very well sitting underneath the eye, especially if you're over the age of 30, because you'll have the glideability from that silicone, from the silica, that will sit on top of the surface of the skin, keeping it from sitting into fine lines and wrinkles. But the talc or other filler powder will have the colorant to it, so that if you are deeper complected, the whitish powders won't have a kickback if your photo is taken. So those are just two different options. Now, the way that I like to go in and set my under eye is I use a flat paddle brush, and I kind of load my brush up with powder. And instead of just kind of fluffing this all around the eye area, I strategically go in and press right on top of the concealer. And I always start next to the inner corner of my eye, because that's where the heaviest amount of pigment is. And then I'll work it out going up underneath that lower lash line, because I did apply concealer there, and carrying it down right on top of my cheekbone. So obviously I mentioned quite a few products that I love to use on myself, products that I like to use on clients, but I want to break those products down for y'all, because everyone has a different eye type. Some have dry eyes, dehydrated eyes, eyes with a lot of fine lines and wrinkles, some with little to no wrinkles, others with a lot of dark circles or swelling. And there's just different products that will suit multiple different needs, especially over the age of 30, because what we've used in our 20s might not necessarily be working for us in our 30s. And if you're older than 30 and you're watching this evening, maybe in your 40s or in your 50s or even your 60s, concealer it's a game changer, but it also is a piece of the game that has to be changed as we get older. So I want to go ahead and kind of zero in on the different products that are out there. The first one that I applied to my eye was the Concealing Corrector Shades in this MAC Pro palette. Now, this is for light skin tones. They do come in deeper ranges. For instance, in my kit, there's medium and there's deep, and the color correctors change as your skin tone increases in depth and in color. For instance, if you are extremely dark, an orange color corrector is really going to be helpful at diminishing dark circles under the eyes. And even these yellow colors change as your skin is deeper. You might get into a mustard shade of yellow, not a very pale shade of yellow. That way you can highlight certain areas. For instance, right now I actually have this pale yellow shade underneath the arch of my brow and above it to just subtly highlight my eyebrow area, because I like the way that that looks. So color correctors are extremely important in being able to help recessed eyes, hollowed out eyes, eyes with dark circles, or maybe you just have a lot of inflammation and redness around your eye, and you can really knock that back with a color corrector so that your eye is more even, or even like I did where I put it on the outer corner, it just highlights my eye and gets rid of that redness and opens it up. This is really something that I do as a trick for women who, for instance, like my mom who's in her 60s now. I like to lift the eye up as much as possible. So I like to use a lot of highlighting techniques on the outer corner of the eye so that that eye just gets some subtle lift. It's like a non-surgical facelift. It's amazing what makeup can do, right? Am I right? Yes, I'm right. Okay, moving on. So another great tool to use is a long wearing type of concealer. There's so many of these on the market. There's Tarte Shape Tape. The brand new one from MAC is the 24-hour Studio Fix. Personally, I love it. Another great holy grail one is the Double Wear from Estee Lauder. There are just so many different types of long wear concealers on the market, and the reason why makeup artists such as myself, or even my friend that I'm collaborating with, reach for them is you can get a lot of pigment payoff, but the consistency is very thin. So you can go in very thin layers, and then when it dries down, it stays put. So if your eye is not dehydrated or extremely dry, you can use these. You don't have to worry about it fading. You don't have to worry about it creasing or traveling into this outer region where you don't really want concealer to build up because it could emphasize fine lines and wrinkles. Now, there are what they call highlighting concealers. So moving away from the long ones for a second, the long wear ones. The highlighting concealers, I'm going to show you one that I personally love, is the Makeup Forever. It's the HD, and this is actually one of their color correctors, concealers in one. This is R22. And it has the ability to hydrate the eye area and reflect light. This is gorgeous on eyes that are dehydrated and eyes that are very mature or need a lot of light reflective properties in the formulation because they have dark circles. Now, the difference between a very thin brightening consistency, because this is a thin formula, so it's just a little bit thinner in its consistency. Now I'm going to put on the MAC, which is more of a long wear. So here's the long wear here. And then here is the more moisturizing highlighting concealer. Now on my hand, they might look exactly the same, but the way that they blend out underneath the eye is completely different. The ones that are more light reflective and highlighting and hydrating are going to be more thin and fluid, whereas a long wear, one that has more of a satin finish that's really pigmented, is not going to sheer itself out as much. So if you just need a very light application of concealer, or again, maybe you're in your 60s and you don't want too much under the eye, grabbing a highlighting type of concealer, one that has light reflective properties in it, one that is also hydrating to the eye, is really, really beneficial. Now, of course, you need to focus on how to set all of these concealers, because at the end of the day, setting a concealer is key in having it last a really long time. And there's multiple ways to set your under eye area. I already shown in the video clip a few minutes ago how I set it. I paddle push it into the skin. I've seen other people grab one of their Beauty Blender sponges. She was talking about how her eye area is dry, so she got her Beauty Blender damp, and then she put setting powder underneath. Some people like to bake. You're going to see my friend Daisy's technique and how she likes to do it. Personally, for me, I have just found that the paddle pushing technique works really great because it's not too much powder on the eye. It's just enough, and it sets it lightly. If you're using a long wear concealer, it's not necessary to set the concealer heavily, because it's got alcohol in it. It's going to dry down. It's going to stick. However, just for the sake of fluidity, you want everything to kind of be as seamless as possible, especially if you have those oily eye beds and that oily eye region. Setting it very lightly with powder, even if it's slightly reflective, is always really good, and it's something that I recommend doing unless you have just found that all powders under your eye age it drastically and you hate it. Those are just some extra little tidbits. I hope that you guys found this video helpful and that you really enjoyed it. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up. Head over to Daisy's channel, check it out, leave her video a thumbs up as well. I would love for you guys to be a part of the Beauty and the Grinds community and hang out with me every single Friday. I do post videos on Fridays now instead of Mondays. I just found that kind of worked better for my schedule. So Every Friday I post a new video. This week I'm talking about concealers. However, next week I will be doing a beauty room tour. It was a requested video and I'm very excited to be putting it together. So I hope that you guys will join me back here for that. All my social media handles will be in the description box, as well as a link to Daisy's channel and some additional videos that I recommend if you want to learn a little bit more about beauty in the grinds and see some more of my videos. I do post on my Instagram every single day. It's a great way to see up and coming things that I'm working on, sneak peeks. You know, a lot of my community over there already know what I'm filming now that I'm releasing 3 weeks from when I filmed it. So it's just really a fun way to get involved. You can connect with me over there, send me direct messages, especially if you have any questions. Anyway, I hope that you guys are having a fantastic holiday season. I know the holidays are upon us. I will be putting a holiday look coming in the next few weeks. Just something that I think will be fun to wear around Christmas and New Year's. But I hope that you guys have a fantastic rest of your evening. Thank you for joining me tonight and my community, and I will see you all next week. Bye, guys.